Hello, 735 class. I am happy to have finally figured this out. It took a little bit of help from the graduate students in the International Gaming Institute because it used to be you could do this directly through YouTube, but I am happy to provide you with a few thoughts on science. This is something you can take a look through at any time over the next week until you and I see each other again. And I'm going off of the slides on that introductory lecture when it was too hot for us to even talk. I'm just going to hit a couple of broad points here, nothing too in-depth, so I don't want to take up too much of your time via video. But as you'll see, this lecture starts off with some good definitional information from your textbook. And as I keep saying, you can use any of the different editions of the textbook. That's why there aren't specific chapters, because the chapters are different in recent editions. But all of them incorporate something like what Zickman says here. Business research is the application of the scientific method. And that, of course, brings us to the question, well, what's that? Like the how do you know question that I talked about on day one? Scientific method is the method to know for researchers, by and large. For a long time, and probably even today for many of you, there have been other ways of answering the how do you know question. Certainly traditional knowledge is the way we've always done it in my business. And that's something that wins out. Or authority knowledge. The boss says so. This is the way I say we do it. That wins out quite a bit too. You can see how both of these would make scientists cringe, because scientists say, let's put it to the test. Let's subject it to empirical inquiry. Empirical means putting it to the test. You've actually done digging. You've gone out and gathered new information on this. You don't just know because that's the way you've always done it or that's the way the boss says it. There's also, in real life, often a sense that there are some things we just can't know, really. Things work mysteriously. We'll never know, really, what generates buzz amongst kids these days, for example. Scientists don't buy that at all. Scientists say, look, let's go after it, man. Let's go find out. Let's go digging. And once more, the tool is the scientific method. Moneyball may be the best popularization and heroicization, makes popular and makes heroes of researchers. See the movie, read the book, think through its arguments. It's not a baseball movie in the end. It's an HR movie. And it's an HR movie about finding the best possible metric to measure players. And by doing that, a team that didn't have any money, and this is actually a team that was run by some of my college baseball teammates who are in the book, were able to compete with folks who had a whole lot of money. So there are tremendous business research lessons in Moneyball. Moneyball is, again, pretty famous for saying, you know what, that's not the metric. The metric that you think is a good one, like batting average is one in Moneyball that for a long time, like my grandfather thought batting average was the best metric, the best measurement. It's a terrible metric because it doesn't predict success. You'll see a lot of folks, as you look at the next slide, who will be thrilled to death, for example, on a casino floor because the place is full. I ran a promotion and look how full this place is. Well, full, not the metric. It's a pretty good metric often. But very often what we've found in casino operations research is that promotions bring in the wrong type of customer. They bring in coupon cutters, value seekers, people who are trying to save a buck and who will eat up real estate on your floor that could be occupied by a better customer. So people, not the metric. Customers, not the metric. Revenues, the metric. And even revenues, not as good as profits, right? So continually think about the sort of, we could play a game show. What's the right metric? What's the right metric? And constantly asking ourselves that question. That's what we do in this research class. So let's start with science. Again, the scientific foundation that Carl Sagan does such a good job of describing. I think it's just a love letter to science that helped me fall in love with science. And for a long time, the how do you know question was kind of unknowable. Religious folks would have the answers to how do you know? Well, God said it, and that is basically what settles it, right? And then the Enlightenment was really this period that illuminated these dark ages where it was only about what religious truth tellers said, and scientists open it up to a much broader path to truth, if you will. Not to get too deep there. But folks like Auguste Comte wanted to call it social physics. Let's study the human world in the same way that we study physics. Billiard balls crashing against each other or apples falling from trees. Let's apply that rigor and that method to people and think about how powerful that could be. So I'm going to bump around your book's version. You can look up yourself. The scientific method we've talked about a little bit already. I want to talk about Sagan and the sorts of things that he advocated. He really advocated for a modest science. He was a smart guy, he was a famous guy, but he thought of science as a very humane, very useful tool. And it was always tentative. It was always open in the Denny's sense. You can see that slide where I have the Denny's restaurant in place. Because Denny's is always open. So should you be to alternative data. When new data comes in, we have to be okay with changing our perception, changing our truth, really. And that's a hard thing. In politics, they call you a flip-flopper if you do that, right? Of, oh, it used to be that for that, and now you're saying you like this. Well, if the evidence changes, it's stupid to cling to the old truth that is no longer supportable. If the evidence changes, you as a scientist have to be okay with that. You as a scientist have to be okay if the data come in and it's contrary to what you've believed your whole career. And that's hard, right? It's really hard to be a good scientist and to think in that way. Sagan loved it, though. And I do want to emphasize these twin pillars. I'm in my house. My kids were here a little while ago. It would have been great to show them off. But the twin pillars are really skepticism and wonder. And on the wonder side, that's actually a picture of my daughter. I was barking at her because she was slow, because she has small legs, and it takes her a long time to walk places. And it turns out in those photos, she had found a tiny, tiny lizard. It was the most adorable thing. And as I'm barking at her, her wonder was just blossoming. And how often do we as grown-ups try to strangle that wonder out of kids, right? We lose that somewhere often. And Sagan says, don't do that. Wonder. Have the same wonder that Audrey, my daughter, has in that picture. Hang on to that. Now you also, and this sounds contradictory, have to look like those Muppets, those angry old men, Statler and Waldorf in that program, because you have to be skeptical too. You have to be kind of a hater, as the kids say these days, and that skepticism sometimes is uneasily cohabiting, is what the way that Sagan loves to put it, because you're constantly questioning. You're constantly saying, well, why? Well, wait, how do you know? I don't know. I need more data. I'm a little bit skeptical. Those are the things that scientists say. There's a constant sort of balance, sort of dance between skeptics and the wondrous. We want you to be both. Good scientists are both of those things. I'll talk to you a little bit about the different ways that the human sciences, whether it's biology, economics, psychology, anthropology, my field, sociology, political science, criminal justice, all these different fields have different ways to approach the human, all super useful. And all of them illuminate some things while making other stuff maybe a little bit more difficult to see, or other stuff a little more blurry. They're like lenses in that way. I'm off to Japan to present massive amounts of research to leaders who are going to make decisions about the future of Japan. I got to tell you, it's a nerdy, rewarding thing, if I can just be serious for a moment. I really am. I can't tell you how delighted I am. In part to be going with two of my former students, you met Brett last week, who are now presenting their own research alongside my research in Japan, as well as the fourth member of our team is Jennifer Roberts, whom I hired and who's a fantastic law professor. All of us, Khalil's an economist, Brett's a business scientist, I'm a sociologist, Jennifer's a lawyer. Each of us come from different backgrounds. Each of us have a really valuable, I think, perspective for the country of Japan. I'll have lots of stories when I get back on how research worked or did not, and I'll miss you. Enjoy Latika. Have a lot of fun, and we'll see you real soon.